The Growing Destinations podcast is brought to you by Experience Rochester. Learn more about Minnesota's third largest city, which is home to Mayo Clinic and features wonderful recreational and entertainment opportunities by visiting experiencerochestermn.com.
These multi-generational family groups that come in, grandma, grandpa, daughters, sons, grandchildren, and they can come and share an evening together, talking, laughing, eating, and then watching a great show. And that's something they go away and then talk about on the way home. And it really is a wonderful experience that I think is resonating with where we are in our society right now.
People come out to the Chanhassen dinner theaters from New York, and they're at the Guthrie, and they say, "Can we come out and see your production of Beautiful?" And they're like blown away. The heads turn, and I was like, I had no idea that it was like this. I had no idea it was going to be this good.
A lot of people don't realize we build our own costumes, we build our own sets, we have all of our own shops here. And so when people come here, they're getting a Minnesota-made product that they can be proud of.
Welcome to the Growing Destinations podcast, where we take a deep dive into destination development and focus on a wide range of topics, from tourism and entertainment to economic development and entrepreneurism, and much more. I'm your host, Bill Von Bank. We're on location at Chanhassen Dinner Theaters in Chanhassen, Minnesota, exploring the legacy and lasting appeal of the nation's largest professional dinner theater complex. For over 5 decades, Chanhassen Dinner Theaters has captivated audiences with unforgettable performances. Today, I'm joined by 3 pivotal figures behind its success. Michael Brandisi is the artistic director and president. Tamara Kangas Erickson is vice president and resident choreographer, and Chris Howland is director of public relations. Michael, Tamara, Chris, welcome to the Growing Destinations podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
So
It's a pleasure to speak with you right here on stage with the enchanting set of Irving Berlin's White Christmas as our backdrop.
And I'll bet you never thought that this is how you were going to get on stage, Bill.
I've been coming here for years as a participant in the audience, so this is pretty special.
Cool.
Before we take a deep dive into the rich history and culture and success of Chanhassen Dinner Theaters, I'd really like to learn a little bit more about each of you, your career, and your history here at Chanhassen Dinner Theaters. Michael, let's start with you.
I actually started here in 1971 as an actor in Thornton Wilder's The Matchmaker. And I played my accordion as the part that I had. It was a gypsy that was created for me, so I had no lines. And I struck up a deal with Gary Gisselman, the artistic director, that if I played the accordion for him in The Matchmaker, he would turn me equity. So I do believe I'm the only Actors Equity member that got his card from playing the accordion. And that's how I got my start here. And I had a long acting career, acted on this stage in many shows, in the Fireside, and I met my wife here in Annie Get Your Gun, and she was playing Annie, and I was playing Charlie Davenport. And then in 1987, Gary left, and I had been freelance directing around Minneapolis, and the Bloombergs knew that, and they gave me a shot at being the artistic director. So I had a trial for 2 shows. I did Private Lives and The Mystery of Edwin Drood, and then they hired me. And so 37 years later, I'm still the artistic director, and it's been a great gig for me. And in 2010, Tamara and I put together a group to purchase the theater, and so now we're also owners, and we run the day-to-day operations. And it's been a great employer in the sky for me and my family. My daughter grew up here in shows. My wife is currently in White Christmas. It was a stroke of luck for me.
Tamara, how about you? Tell us a little bit about your career and your history here at Chanhassen Dinner Theaters.
It's very proud to say that I was a child actor here. So I started working here in 1980 in The Sound of Music and did a year-long run in The Sound of Music. And then when I was 12, 13 years old, did a year-long run in Annie. So 2 years of my real formative years growing up I spent in this building, and it really shaped me in ways I probably can't even pinpoint today. But that was sort of the start. And then I went to St. Olaf College. I got a degree in dance. Really thought I was going to go for more of a modern dance career. And then musical theater just kept pulling me back, and Chanhassen Dinner Theaters kept pulling me back. So I was living in New York, I was living in Florida, and just kept getting pulled back to do shows and to assist the earlier choreographer. And then there was an opportunity to come back and choreograph Anything Goes in 2004, and here I stayed.
And now, Chris, you've been at Chanhassen a long time. Can you share a little bit more about your history here?
Yes, I was very involved in musical theater in my high school and college years. And I got a job here the summer after my freshman year in the box office, which is a great training ground, by the way. If you want a career in theater administration, get behind a phone and take a gazillion phone calls a day. It will teach you how to take care of a customer. It was wonderful training for me. And I was a music major at Concordia College in Moorhead. And after a summer working here, I was bit by the theater bug, and I decided to change my major. And I waited patiently for the job that I have now. I waited like 10 years through a couple of different ownership changes and all of that. And in 1981, they offered me the box office manager role, but in 1988 to 89, they offered me this job that I currently have as director of public relations. And around the same time, actually, as Michael was named artistic director. So he's really the only artistic director that I've worked under, except we've had some guest directors. So I kind of grew up with him and was mentored by actually his father-in-law, Bill Barber. And this place has been my second home my entire life. And I want to add that Tamara's children have grown up on stage here as well. And so have my son also. Michael's daughter, Tam's girls, and my son, they all kind of grew up running around this beautiful, fun place.
Let's dial back on the original history of this facility. It's been here a long time in Chanhassen. And when it opened, Chanhassen didn't look like this.
No, I mean, there was a gas station, a few bars. There was a supper club and a lumber yard. And the Chanhassen Dinner Theater grew up where once stood a cornfield, really. There was really even not a 4-lane highway out here at the time or anything. So yes, the city has really changed into something really quite magnificent.
Well, and everybody thought Herb Bloomberg, who was the genius who founded and built this building, was crazy. I mean, there was nothing out here. And didn't he build the old log first?
He did.
And then he said, well, this was fun. I'm going to build a bigger theater over in Chanhassen in my town. And everybody thought he was nuts and it would never work. And he was an architect, so he was a real genius.
And 56 years later, here we still stand
are in the same building.
Michael, as both artistic director and president, you wear many hats. How do you approach managing day-to-day operations alongside your artistic responsibilities?
I've kind of changed that a little bit lately. I'm getting up there in age, so I've turned over the responsibilities to Tamara and Solveig to run the day-to-day operation, and I'm there when they need me. If they need me, I'm there. If they want to ask me, should we purchase this for $1 million, and I'll definitely chime in when it's a big deal. But usually I'm pretty much just directing the plays now, and it's been good for me to kind of step back a little bit from the day-to-day operation. I did spend a long time with finding out how to pick stakes and what carpet needs to be replaced. And it was a lot of fun. Actually, the food operation was where I really focused a lot of learning. And I loved getting all that experience. I actually went out to the place where they cut our steaks and put a white coat on and a mask and went in the freezer and met Craig, the guy who cuts our steaks, and talked to him about marbling. And it was really fantastic, to learn all that and learn about accounting and be able to read the P&L. And I still can't read a balance sheet. I don't know. Can you read the balance sheet now?
Somewhat.
Okay, you're better than I. Yeah, I still can't read it.
Tamara, how do you balance your responsibilities of leading the choreography and vice president of the organization?
Because of our long runs, it's really helpful because we can focus on the business for most of the year. And then there's a couple of critical months where we really need to work on the shows. And, because I choreograph the shows, I can kind of manage my time a little bit. And I work pretty far in advance, so I can do my prep work. And then when we're in rehearsal, we're sort of heads down in the rehearsal room. We're not doing much with the day-to-day operation for those many weeks that we're in the rehearsal room. But it seems to work out pretty well. And we can find a balance. But I'd like to go back, Bill, to Michael for a second, because one thing he didn't touch on, which is critically important, is his idea about how to run this business is why we're successful today. Because when we bought the company, this theater was doing musical theater in 4 rooms. And Michael never thought that that made sense. He's like, I think we're spreading our audience out. We're not adding people. We need to think about really diversifying our programming. And that's where we started. And the first thing he did was bring Stevie Ray's in as a comedy troupe downstairs. And then over time, we developed the concert series and really were committed to only having musical theater in this main dinner theater. And that strategy has been what has saved this company. And so he should not sell himself short in terms of that contribution is major, because that has changed how we do business.
Unique ways to use the space that many, maybe from the outside looking in, would say, well, it's a theater complex, but theater complex plus.
Yes, and also I don't know if you mentioned this, but we do weddings and ceremonies and receptions and bar mitzvahs and all sorts of parties and great family reunions in our other spaces. So that is another part of our business that we have sort of really solidified over the last 15 years or so.
Chris, you have an important job of bringing people in.
I do.
So the theater is successful. Tell us about your role and how you do that, because you've been doing it a long time very successfully.
You know, it's a team. We have a team that's fantastic, and Tamara actually leads our team along with Joel Rainville, our director of sales and marketing. But we have a great group of people who do all sorts of things. We used to just solely advertise in the newspaper and on the radio. Now we're really into television. We're really, really into the digital marketing very heavily. Everything has sort of changed in my career over the last few years, especially as readership in newspapers has kind of gone down and more people are gathering their news from different sources, like especially online. So we have sort of pivoted that and kind of followed with where those trends are. But my main job is to get stories, to get people to talk about us. And so a lot of people don't understand that public relations, they think, oh, that I work with customers, but I really do not work very much with customers. I work with people like you and people at the different media outlets to try to get them to do stories on us. And by that vehicle, we get people to hear about us and come through our doors.
I always say public relations or earned media is really the unsung hero of marketing.
Oh, that's funny that you say that, because I always tell everybody that I'm a bottom feeder. And the reason I say that is because I'm sort of at the bottom of the rung. I'm always begging people to do things for me, and people are always doing me favors, and I've sort of gotten good at begging and asking for favors.
Chris, you are the best in the business.
She is. She is. She is. Well, speaking of high standards, how has Chanhassen been able to maintain its high standards in quality, such as having a live orchestra and professional cast, even as the landscape of theater has changed?
There was a time, I think, in the 70s when I was first involved here, that we had 60 or 70 members of the National Dinner Theater Association. Now we're down to 20, but maybe of those 20, 2 or 3 are equity and the rest are non-equity, non-union. They're all good. The ones that are left are all good operations. They all produce high-quality productions, and they survived the demise of the dinner theater by keeping their production values high and not having live orchestras, like, as you said, not production values. I love when people come out from New York and, you know, dinner theater has this stigma, and people think, oh, okay, it's going to be like a lousy buffet, and they're going to be waiting on us during the show and clinking dishes, and the show's going to be kind of rank and amateurish. And then when people come out to the Chanhassen dinner theaters from New York, and they're at the Guthrie, and they say, can we come out and see your production of Beautiful? And they're like blown away. The heads turn, and I'm like, I had no idea that it was like this. I had no idea it was going to be this good. It's that kept us alive. We never stopped. Not only did we not stop having live music, but we grew our orchestra. Right? This production has 10 live players in the orchestra pit, and a cast of, 27 or 28. It's like a huge show. It's a big Broadway show. And that's what kept us alive. Sometimes it's very expensive and it cuts our margin down, but it's worth it because we're still here.
Well, and we have between 300 and 400 employees. It takes a lot of people to run this place. And so it's an expensive operation.
And it's table service. It's a really nice evening out. You come out here, we have the best wait staff ever. I mean, veterans, really good waiters. I mean, I love watching them work. And the food is excellent. I always say that, the first impression is the food. That's the first thing that happens. People come into the dinner theater and they have a drink and they have food. And if that's lousy and then the show starts, they're not going to be really favorable to the show. So we put as much emphasis on the dinner part of dinner theater as the theater part.
And the welcoming aspect. I think that when somebody comes as a guest, they walk in the front door, they're greeted by that beautiful roaring fireplace and an actual person who's very dressed up to welcome them. I mean, it's a very nice first impression. That was something Michael also started.
It's a great package from beginning to end, isn't it?
It is, Bill. And what's awesome about our current culture is we really have shifted in the last 10 years from, in terms of, I think, gift giving, especially, getting away from things and getting more towards experiences. And I think we have really benefited from that. And we hear it all the time. These multi-generational family groups that come in, grandma, grandpa, daughters, sons, grandchildren, and they can come and share an evening together, talking, laughing, eating, and then watching a great show. And that's something they go away and then talk about on the way home. And it really is a wonderful experience that I think is resonating with where we are in our society right now.
And we also have the free parking. It's easy. It's very easy.
And what a benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Because people don't have to go to dinner someplace downtown, hustle back to some parking ramp, get in their car, drive somewhere else to go to a show, park again. It's very, very seamless.
And the value is still there. I mean, people know. People do the math when they go downtown to see a show and they go out to dinner and they park and then they go like, well, we can go to Chanhassen for half of this and see a really good show. I had an artistic director from Florida call me this morning from the Oslo Theater, and Peter Rothstein, and he said, I'd like to come out and see your show, your White Christmas show, because we're thinking about doing it next year. So that's really a great thing that we've gone from being, just a dinner theater to now a theater that people are looking to and come to plan their seasons based on what we're doing.
And, here, this is important too. I'm going to toss this in. When Michael says that we hire live musicians and we hire Equity or professional acting company, everything here that you see is done locally by people who live in this community. It's Minnesota produced, Minnesota made. And I think that is really commendable. And a lot of people don't realize we build our own costumes. We build our own sets. We have all of our own shops here. And so when people come here, they're getting a Minnesota made product that they can be proud of. We are proud of it. And it's just staggering that we have this operation that can do that level year after year after year and be
all
successful
on site?
at it. All right on site.
Yeah, there's a lot of theaters in the country, very well-known, reputable regional theaters that go to New York because they don't have the local talent pool that we have here in Minneapolis.
Very
And,
true.
Sue Berger, who's running the lights for us today, is an excellent lighting designer that lives here. My sound designer, my costume designer, my set designer, they all live here.
Tamara, what's one of your proudest moments at Chanhassen where your choreography made a strong connection with the cast or audience?
This current show is one of them. If I went back, I could probably come up with some other ones, Newsies in particular, Mary Poppins. But really what we're doing in this show, White Christmas, is exceptional. And that has much less to do with me and has so much more to do with the cast and the level and the depth of talent of the dancers in this cast. They are phenomenal. So I can only do as much as what I have to work with in terms of the abilities of the cast members, and this cast is exceptional. So the dance and the choreography is pretty awesome, and they're maintaining it just beautifully, and it's really stunning to watch.
Michael, what have been some of your favorite productions to direct over the years? You've directed a lot.
Yeah.
And what stands out to you about those experiences?
for a long time, I answered that question by saying Jesus Christ Superstar because it was really one of my all-time favorite productions in terms of everything landing, the concept, the casting, and the concept was really out there and a little bit different. And Les Mis was one, and a lot of the shows that I really loved didn't sell very well. But they were fun. They were fun for me. But recently, I just did Jersey Boys, and I think that the Jersey Boys did very well for us financially and artistically. I think it was a superb production, and I just loved the play. So I think Jersey Boys is my new favorite.
Chris, have there been particular productions or moments that deepened your appreciation for musical theater and the work you do here?
There are so many shows. I guess one of my all-time favorites, which people might be surprised to hear, was Sister Act. It was a play that was like White Christmas, adapted from a popular movie, but they added so many great songs for the Broadway production. And I probably saw that show more than any show that I've ever seen here since, 1977, because it brought me so much happiness. It just brought me so much joy. And I have to say that is probably our mission here, is to, celebrate the people who come here and their celebrations. And, you look in this room before you leave at night and you see all the people laughing and having fun. That show, well, they enjoy all the shows. But I will say that Sister Act brought me personal joy. It was just the music, the story was so much fun. I'm not even Catholic, but I absolutely loved it.
You were absolved.
I am absolved.
For that show.
I loved the music. I loved the story. And it took me by surprise because I wasn't a huge fan of the movie. When they do these adaptations, you never know what great things they're going to do.
For the many years that I've come here, I've always heard that of you, Michael, that you bring something extra special or different, or you tweak a show that maybe people think they know, but then you bring a different edge to it.
Well, let's talk about State Fair. I want you to tell that story.
Well, so State Fair was a play that didn't do very well in New York and closed actually in a few months after it opened. And I called
Broadway.
Yeah, on Broadway, and I called the licensing agents and said, can I get the rights to do it out here? And they said, no, we're not doing any more productions of State Fair. And I called them back a week later and said, I'm calling again to ask if I can get State Fair. And I said I would be willing to commit to an 8-month run. And they said, we'll call you back next week. And they had a staff meeting in New York, and they decided to give us the rights to do it based on the fact that we guaranteed them 8 months run, which for us was a little short in those days. And we did it, and it was hugely successful. I mean, it played like gangbusters. The reviews were fantastic. And all of the people from Rodgers and Hammerstein organization that licensed it came out to see the production, including John Davidson, who played Abel Frake in the Broadway production, and they just loved it. And John Davidson told me after the show that our production was everything they wanted it to be on Broadway, and it wasn't. And he said he came back a second time with his daughter Ashley, and I believe his wife came too, and they sat at 4:15 and saw it a second time. And he said, "This is an amazing production." I mean, so it was a big success story. It was 1997, and a bit of a turning point for us. We actually made money that year. So yeah, it was a great story.
It's some of the things he did though were unique and novel. Like for example, he added children to the cast. Why did you add kids?
Well, because you can't do State Fair. You can't do a State Fair musical without having kids in
Right.
it. So we had 2 little kids in it anyhow. Yeah, I don't know. It's about finding out where the heart is in the piece, and even a show that you're not really crazy about. You're just kind of like I'll tell you honestly, White Christmas. When I first read it, I was like, "Oh, it's nice. It's a nice show," and I think it's going to play well and people will enjoy it. And I wasn't like head over heels for it. And then I sort of got into the general story, and I'm 76 years old, so this story really resonated for me. A guy who had a career that made a difference. He saved a lot of lives. And now he was running a lodge and feeling lost and wondering who he was. And I imagine I'm going to feel like that someday when I retire or quit, and I'm going to go like, well, now who is Michael Brindisi? And I just latched onto that story, and suddenly this piece became so important to me. And I was like, this is the most important play I've ever worked on. It's about me. And it's finding those kernels of truth that make the shows special. And I try to find them in shows I love, and I try to find them in shows I've done many times, and I try to find them in shows that I'm not really that crazy about. And that seems to work.
Chris, what's special about White Christmas to you?
I've always loved the movie. I think my husband watches it every single year. You know, and then the whole world does that. And well, the United States anyway, people love the movie. It is a little bit of a different story, which kind of took me by surprise. And I saw the Broadway tour of it, and I loved it. I walked out of the theater wanting to tap dance, and that couldn't be further from any of my abilities. But that show is full of the most amazing tapping. And I think that people come and they go, oh, I would love to be able to express myself in that way, to be able to dance with wild abandon. I mean, they are just hoofing it up there night after night. And I think that just makes people, again, I always go back to the joy. It just makes you feel like let go of your troubles. Just be in the moment and just enjoy the beauty of the costumes, the dancing. I mean, it's just a gorgeous production.
Same question for you, Tamara. What's special for you about White Christmas?
With Michael, I really love the general story. I love that Michael pulled that story out. You know, it's interesting because I wasn't a real fan of it when I watched videos of the original tour. And, you know, it felt very inflated, but at the same time, a little flat. And I think our production has a lot of depth and vibrancy. You know, part of that also is this room. There's an intimacy in this room that you feel that almost that you can be a part of the production. You really feel it's immersive, even though it's separate and on stage. But I think that there is an excitement and a dynamic, exciting quality that this production has, and it's really connecting with audiences in a really special way.
Well, I was at opening night, and it definitely connected with that audience, and you brought a lot of joy to that audience. I really appreciate you allowing me to be on stage with you today for this podcast, and I want to thank all three of you for being our guests on the Growing Destinations podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bill.
It was really fun talking about what we do.
Thank you for tuning in to the Growing Destinations podcast, and don't forget to subscribe. This podcast is brought to you by Experience Rochester. Find out more about Rochester, Minnesota, and its growing arts and culture scene, its international culinary flavors, and award-winning craft beer by visiting experiencerochestermn.com.